Dear grade 5A students, hope you're doing great. So we're gonna continue our session entitled, or our lesson entitled, Gospel Superheroes. Please open page 210. Okay. We are starting with the heroes on land. Heroes on land. So it basically means we have some heroes and we are gonna talk about them and their actions. We are starting with the Mediterraneans. The Mediterraneans. What did the Mediterraneans do in this huge problem or disaster? What was it? The deep water horizon drilling. What happened to it? Yeah, it exploded and gallons of oil leaked into the ocean. Okay, so the Mediterraneans did what? They dedicated their efforts helping what? Helping marine animals. They dedicated their efforts helping marine animals. Like what? Like pelicans and turtles. Like pelicans and yeah, what's a pelican? Okay. The pelican is this animal. This one. This is called a pelican. This is called a pelican. Okay, great. So, number two, the naturalists and ecologists. Naturalists and ecologists. What did they do? Well, they actually cleaned up the animal habitats. They cleaned up where the animals live. Where the animals live. Because if the oil reached it, it's gonna be a huge disaster and animals will die. Okay? So, that's for the Mediterraneans and naturalists and ecologists. Number three, the volunteers. The volunteers. The volunteers. What did they do? They help it out in many tasks. They help it out in many tasks. Once they need them, they are ready to help. Okay? They help it out in many tasks. Number four, the government officials. The government officials. What did they do? They did what? They monitored fishing areas to decide which were safe. Which were safe. Well, we actually know that fishermen relied on shrimp and crab. They relied on shrimp and crab. So it wasn't safe to fish in these areas. But the government officials, they monitored, they found areas or decided, or okay, fishing areas to decide which were safe, which were for safe for who? For fishermen. Okay, okay. Number five, bankers and insurance companies. Bankers and insurance companies. Bankers and insurance companies. They reach out to the fishermen. They reach out to the fishermen because we all know that the fishermen would suffer in these situations. Okay, so they try to support and provide them with all what they need. Okay, that's amazing. So let's recap. We have actually five heroes. Okay. The Mediterraneans, they decided their efforts, or they dedicated their efforts helping marine animals. Naturalists and ecologists, they clean up the animals' habitats. Number four, the volunteers, they were ready once they need them. The government officials, they monitored what fishing areas. Number five, bankers and insurance companies, they tried to help the fishermen. Okay, so we are gonna listen to these or to this.
Watchers from the sky. From the water, it was hard to see where the oil was spreading. Responders had to collaborate with other agencies, such as the NASA space program. Satellites in the sky sent information to scientists on the ground. Meteorologists tracked storms that might pose an obstacle to the response teams. Photographs helped team leaders decide how to assign their workers. Pilots and their crews flew over the Gulf region in helicopters and planes. Some studied how the oil slick moved from place to place. Others directed the placement of floating barriers to protect sensitive areas. Some crews transferred needed supplies back and forth between land and sea. Heroes on land. As the oil approached land, new responders leapt into action. Veterinarians dedicated their efforts to helping out marine animals such as pelicans and turtles. They would capture and treat affected animals before returning them to the wild. Naturalists and ecologists cleaned up the animals' habitats. Quite often, these groups' efforts overlapped, and they helped one another. Volunteers also helped out on many tasks. Local fishermen also needed help. They relied on crabs, shrimp, and other seafood for their livelihood. Government officials monitored fishing areas to decide which were safe. Bankers and insurance companies also reached out to the fishermen. They helped find ways to make up for the lost income from seafood sales. Biologists catch an oil-soaked brown pelican to clean and return to the wild.
Okay, great. So let's move to the next page, page 211, and let's see what happened in Florida. Let's see what happened in Florida. Well, actually, in Florida, they made something called think tank. Think tank. Think tank. Okay, what did this think tank do? It trapped floating oil before it reached the beach. It traps what? It traps floating oil before it reaches that beach. Because if it reaches the beach, it's gonna be a huge disaster. Okay, so they made what? They made something called the sword. The sword. What did it stand for? Shallow water oil recovery device. Shallow water oil recovery device. Shallow water oil recovery device. Okay, so this is the sword. Okay, what was this sword's job? Well, actually, its job was to absorb the oil. Okay, where in the ocean, using some aircrafts and some tools and some machines and some tools. Okay, to control the oil. Okay, and to prevent it as much as they can from reaching the beach. Okay, so this is what happened in Florida. They make something called this think tank. It traps oil. Okay, before it reaches the beach, what did they do? They did something called, or they made something called the sword, shallow water oil recovery device. What was its function? Its function was to absorb oil from spreading or reaching the beach. Okay, that was for today's session. And as we can see here, well, they managed or they controlled this huge problem through what? Through teamwork. Through teamwork. Okay, a lot of people with different jobs work together to control this issue. Okay, so that was for today. Thank you so much for listening and wishing you a good day. Thank you.